On my wedding day, I swapped grooms. Eleanor's last wish before she passed was to see Brandon and me married. To fulfill this, I specifically moved the engagement party date forward. Brandon readily agreed. But at the party, in front of Eleanor and all the guests, Brandon proposed to his childhood sweetheart. The moment they passionately kissed, a large mouthful of bright red blood gushed from Eleanor's mouth. Seeing Eleanor's condition, I knelt before Brandon, begging him to at least put on a show. But Brandon roughly shoved my hand away, pointed at Eleanor and me, and sneered, "A pair of drama queens. Get out! Don't ruin my engagement party." The next second, I received a text message Brandon had secretly sent. "I was just putting on a show for Tiffany. Take your mom and leave quickly. I'll apologize personally in a few days. Don't worry, it won't affect our wedding date." Before the ambulance reached the hospital, Eleanor was gone forever. At the funeral, watching my grief-stricken Robert, I finally made up my mind. Dad, in a big metropolis like this, finding a live-in son-in-law is simple enough. Let's change grooms. Robert froze at my words. My infatuation with Brandon over the years was so well known, even the dogs in the street knew about it. Perhaps worried I was just being spiteful, Robert softened his tone. "Catherine, the wedding date is approaching. This is not a matter for games. Besides, Brandon was someone your mom favored. Her greatest wish before she passed was to see you two happy together." Before Robert could finish, I cut him off. "Do you remember? The person Mom truly favored was the one from the Forrester family." A flicker of great anxiety crossed Robert's eyes. "Nonsense. The Forrester family member has been paralyzed and unconscious in bed for years due to a car accident. Why would you marry him? Our Sullivan family hasn't fallen so low that we need to trade you for wealth and status." I turned and smiled at Rob. ERT, someone paralyzed in bed wouldn't propose to another woman at my engagement party. Mom had one more wish before she passed, that I protect our family business. Marrying into the Forrester family is the best choice. Let's settle this. Robert stood frozen, but he didn't utter another word of refusal. Marrying into the Forrester family, who constantly dominate financial headlines, must be the wish of every prominent family in Metropolis, prayed for day and night. Even if Ethan Forrester was now a cripple, I believed there were still many who harbored this wish. If it weren't for a flourishing family business, and if Ethan Forrester hadn't confessed his feelings to me thousands of times years ago, perhaps this live-in son-in-law wouldn't be attainable, even on bended knee. "Catherine, why is it so gloomy in here?" On my way back to the study, a familiar voice behind me stopped me in my tracks. I turned around and saw Tiffany walking into the main hall, arm in arm with Brandon, a playful smile on her face. Perhaps sensing my gaze on his arm, Brandon looked slightly awkward, but he didn't let go. "Catherine, why didn't you reply to my messages? Tiffany's family has been pressuring her lately. I was just putting on a show for her. You don't have to take it seriously. I came today specifically to explain to you and Mrs. Eleanor. Honestly, you and Mrs. Eleanor are truly actors, aren't you? You played it so well. Where did you hire that ambulance? And where is Mrs. Eleanor?" Before I could reply, Robert turned and looked at Brandon coldly, saying in a deep voice, "Sullivan family matters are none of your concern from now on. Your marriage with Catherine." I quickly shot Robert a look, stopping him from saying what he was about to. That look landed in Brandon's eyes. He stepped forward, bowing to Robert and smiling as he replied, "Mr. Robert, please don't worry. I won't delay Catherine's wedding date. Today's incident was just a misunderstanding. Please help explain it to Mrs. Eleanor and Catherine." Robert's face grew even darker. "Mrs. Eleanor? Are you finished saying what you needed to say? If there's nothing else, I need to rest. Mrs. Davison, show them out." I interrupted Robert again. If it were in the past, during this darkest moment of losing a loved one, how I would have wished Brandon was there for me, even if he said nothing, just his presence would have been a comfort. But now, I didn't want to see him for another second. Brandon looked slightly taken aback by my attitude. He dropped his smile and took a step towards me, looking at me. "Catherine, I'm seriously here to apologize." Of course, I believed he was serious about apologizing. A driver's son hooking up with the Sullivan family, prominent figures in Metropolis's industry. Brandon's dad must be laughing in his sleep. Brandon, it's all my fault. If it weren't for putting on a show for me, Catherine wouldn't be angry with you. But it wasn't a big deal, was it? Is Catherine overreacting? I guess they're right when they say prostitutes are heartless and actors are faithless. My mother loved her acting career her whole life, only retiring for Robert. I was acting on set when I was 3 years old. Tiffany's seemingly innocent remark, disguised as flirting, was actually an insult to both my mother and me. Remembering the scene my mother witnessed just before she died, I stepped forward, grabbed Tiffany's collar, and gritted my teeth. Say that again. Tiffany grabbed Brandon's hand like a frightened rabbit and started wailing. Brandon, I didn't say anything bad. It was just a joke. The next second, Brandon violently slapped my hand away. He pulled Tiffany into his arms and looked at me coldly. That's enough. Catherine Sullivan. Tiffany didn't do anything to you, so why are you taking your anger out on her? Apologize to Tiffany. Otherwise, don't blame me for ditching you again on our wedding day. Looking at Brandon's contorted face, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. I had truly idolized him for years. In the past, if I saw he was unhappy at all, I probably wouldn't even wait for him to speak before eagerly apologizing to Tiffany. I had truly humbled myself to the point of being buried in the dirt. Brandon, don't be so mean to Catherine. She doesn't have to apologize. It's just about the show Catherine is in lately. Could she use her connections to get me a role? Brandon couldn't resist the young woman's coquettish plea. He leaned down to brush a stray strand of hair from Tiffany's forehead and thumped his chest, saying, Don't worry, she always treats my words like gospel. As long as you're happy. As he spoke, he playfully hooked Tiffany's nose with his index finger. After sharing a deep look, Brandon looked up at me and spoke imperiously. Did you hear what Tiffany just said? Your new show, arrange a supporting female role for Tiffany. Do this, and I'll marry you properly. Catherine, this is your chance to get Brandon to forgive you, okay? You should really cherish it. I looked at the smug Tiffany and let out a cold laugh. They say prostitutes are heartless and actors are faithless. Your Brandon doesn't like heartless women, so you better not act. Having said that, before Brandon could reply, I took Robert's arm and returned to my room. Immediately, Tiffany's heartbroken sobs erupted from behind me, followed by Brandon's soft words of comfort. The daughter of a streetwalker, daring to call me heartless? They were shameless together, a perfect match. 3 days later was the day of the Stellar Awards ceremony. This highest honor in the entertainment industry was originally a gift I intended for Eleanor's 60th birthday. But now, she would never see it. Thinking of this, my nose stung with sadness. Before I could compose myself, a staff member rushed towards me anxiously. Catherine, something's wrong. Mr. Bra. Dawn is here, demanding that today's award be given to someone else. As soon as she finished speaking, Brandon walked towards me with Tiffany by his side. I turned and looked around at the layers of reporters surrounding us. Because of the commotion, everyone was looking our way. Brandon seemed to notice the emotions in my eyes. He held Tiffany's hand tightly and looked at me. Catherine Sullivan, I won't hold what happened at your house against you, out of respect for Mr. Robert, but that matter isn't finished. Today, you will give the Stellar Awards to Tiffany. You see all these reporters? I'm sure you don't want to be embarrassed, do you? Looking at the smug Brandon, I thought he had lost his mind. This award is for actors. Tiffany isn't even getting minor roles right now. How dare she show her face here? Besides, I'm just a recipient of the Stellar Awards. What right do I have to decide who gets it or not? Brandon seemed to think I was hesitating. He stepped forward, grabbed my collar, and said in a low, fierce voice, Catherine Sullivan, don't push your luck. If you don't give this award to Tiffany today, don't even think about marrying me. Excuse me, sir, whether you get married or not is up to you, but today's award must be accepted by Miss Sullivan. A steady, resonant voice interrupted Brandon's arrogance. I turned to look at the newcomer. The surrounding reporters gasped upon seeing the person, someone from the Forrester family. How did a small award ceremony get the organizers' attention? Even Tiffany stared at the newcomer, frozen. She tugged on Brandon's sleeve and whispered, "Brandon, this person isn't simple. Did you see that scar on his face? He got it years ago protecting Ethan Forrester. This is his personal bodyguard, he rarely shows up. Maybe we shouldn't cause trouble." Brandon swallowed, looking at the man who was a head taller than him. He stepped back 2 paces, clearing a path. The man's face remained expressionless. He turned to me, "Miss Sullivan, the award ceremony is starting. Please." All the way to the stage, there was constant whispering beside me. "Oh my God, what's the relationship between the Sullivan family and the Forrester family?" The Forrester family sponsors hundreds of award ceremonies a year, but this is the only one they send someone to. I couldn't help but feel confused too. It was said that Ethan Forrester had been in a coma for years. How could he still be giving orders to his subordinates? But if it wasn't him, who else could it be? The man watched me accept the award, then disappeared. I was still in a daze, not having fully recovered. The reporters had already swarmed over. "Miss Sullivan, just now when you accepted your award, your Robert mentioned your wedding date is in 3 days and there would be a surprise for everyone. Could you tell us what that surprise is?" Brandon seemed to have snapped out of his shock. Before I could reply, he got up, rushed forward, and snatched the microphone from my hand. Looking at the numerous reporters below the stage, a smug smile played on his lips. "Catherine Sullivan has been fawning over me for so many years. What surprise could there be at this wedding? Is she going to bring along a little sister to join me in the bridal chamber? My father-in-law is always so dramatic, wouldn't you agree?" As soon as Brandon spoke, a burst of laughter erupted from the crowd. "Mr. Brandon has a point. We've all seen how much Miss Sullivan loves you over the years. But whether she brings a little sister to join you in the bridal chamber, well, that depends on your capabilities." At these words, the male reporters present all broke into lewd smiles. Clearly, the scene before him greatly satisfied Brandon. He turned, wrapped his arm around Tiffany's slender waist, and held the microphone towards me. "Catherine Sullivan, let me tell you, if you really have that kind of idea, don't look elsewhere. So here. I only want Tiffany. You can both marry into my family together, and you'll be good sisters. How about that? I'm waiting for the surprise you'll give me at the wedding in 3 days." Another deafening roar of laughter came from below the stage. I looked coldly at the smug Brandon, suppressing the revulsion in my heart, and said coldly, "Brandon, what makes you so sure that you'll be the one marrying me in 3 days?" Brandon was startled for a moment, then clutched his stomach and burst into maniacal laughter. "Catherine Sullivan, you've been sleeping with me for 8 years. Who else would want damaged goods like you? If you don't marry me, who else will?" Having said that, he swaggered away with Tiffany by his side. Before leaving, he didn't forget to instruct the reporters following him, "Don't miss it in 3 days. I'll show you Metropolis's first wedding with marrying 2 women." Tiffany playfully pinched Brandon's waist with a coquettish expression. "Oh, you. But I'm willing." After saying this, Tiffany didn't forget to turn and give me a look, her eyes filled with the smugness of a victor. Not long after Brandon left, a sudden phone call interrupted my thoughts. I looked at the unfamiliar number but chose to answer. A sharp, venomous voice instantly came from the other end. "Still so arrogant after your mom died? Let's see how long you can keep that up. I'm telling you, I'm pregnant with Brandon's baby. After you get married, and after Brandon takes over Sullivan Corp., that will be the end of you and your old man. Let me tell you, the engagement party that day wasn't a show for me at all. It was a brilliant plan to send your mother on her way. A useless mother really gave birth to a useless daughter. In 3 days, just wait for the surprise Brandon and I have prepared for you." Having said that, before I could reply, the call was hung up. I looked at the black screen of my phone, rolled down the car window, and took deep breaths, accompanied by waves of nausea in my stomach, starting to gag repeatedly. So this was all their plan. My mother's death was a wrongful death. I frantically slapped my own face, hating myself for being so slow to realize. Hating that my misplaced love had actually killed my mother. I dug my nails into my palms, forcing myself to calm down. Then I found the number I knew by heart and dialed it. "Mike, help me investigate something. As soon as possible. I sat stiffly in the car until dawn, receiving Mike's call back. Listening to what he slowly said on the other end of the line, I finally let out a breath. It seemed my suspicions were correct. So, in 3 days, the wedding I would give Brandon and Tiffany would truly be an unprecedented wedding full of surprises. For 3 days straight, there was no news from Brandon. But their movements were constantly relayed to me. Brandon went to my prenatal checkup today. He wasn't this attentive when your mom was terminally ill, was he? Oh well, one's dead and one's hope, you should understand his actions, right? Brandon told me that after you're married, within 3 months, he'll take over Sullivan Corporation. He won't even want to leave a small house for you and your dad. It was only because I begged him repeatedly that he agreed to let you rent a basement apartment. How are you going to thank me? Brandon said that being stuck with you for 8 years felt disgusting every single second. If it wasn't for the Sullivan family's money, he probably wouldn't even bother spitting on you. In the past, reading these messages would have driven me insane. But now, I simply treated them as a joke. I hoped Brandon and Tiffany would be as arrogant in 3 days as they were in these messages. Then I might even respect them. But I feared that in 3 days, they would become dogs begging for scraps again. In the blink of an eye, the wedding day arrived. Brandon seemed to have invited all his relatives. His plainly dressed relatives praised Brandon's father to the heavens. Your Brandon is successful after all. Didn't pay a single cent in wedding settlement, and found such a rich wife. Get ready to inherit everything from her family. All this money will belong to the Brandon family from now on. Yeah, are there any more women like this? Introduce one to my son. Women like this are usually quite foolish and listen to their husbands after marriage. Hearing the voices drifting in from outside the dressing room, I couldn't help but laugh. The young woman doing my makeup looked at me with worry in her eyes. Sister, how can you marry a man like that? Look at his relatives. They don't sound like good people at all. I smiled at the young woman and didn't speak. Bad people naturally won't have good outcomes. If they haven't faced consequences yet, it just means their time hasn't come. But it will be soon. Only as I walked from the dressing room towards the stage did I realize that today wasn't just Brandon's relatives. There was even a group of women over 50, dressed gaudily. Through the crowd, I immediately spotted Tiffany, also wearing a wedding dress, just like me. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. It seemed she really intended to marry Brandon alongside me. Those gaudily dressed women were probably her mother's sisters. How dirty! Perhaps seeing that I had reached the stage, Brandon, holding Tiffany's hand, also came closer. As they got closer, I saw the corsage on Tiffany's chest. Sure enough, it clearly said bride. Truly ridiculous. I gave the officiant a look, and the officiant went onto the stage with a smile. Today is a joyous day for the Sullivan family. Before the ceremony begins, Miss Sullivan has something to say. Let's welcome Miss Sullivan to the stage. A flicker of confusion crossed Brandon's and Tiffany's eyes. Amidst the stunned stares of the crowd, I walked onto the stage. Today is my wedding day, but I've prepared a huge surprise for everyone. And that is, today, I am changing my groom. As soon as I spoke, the venue erupted in an uproar. The first to panic was Brandon. He frantically rushed towards me, pointing at me from below the stage and roaring furiously. Who are you going to swap me for? Who else would want you besides me? I will. A deep, hoarse voice sounded from behind me. I turned and saw Ethan Forrester slowly walking towards me. Indeed, it was Ethan Forrester. Seeing that I wasn't surprised, a hint of astonishment flickered in Ethan Forrester's eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Robert, seeing Ethan Forrester walk out from backstage perfectly fine, froze in his seat. But the ones whose faces were the most unsightly were Brandon and Tiffany. Brandon was originally a driver's son. The year Ethan Forrester had his accident, Brandon was still following his boss around, constantly nodding and bowing. So he had never met Ethan Forrester. But Brandon had been in these circles for quite some time now. I believed he could still recognize Ethan Forrester's expensive suit. But clearly, Tiffany was far more knowledgeable than him. It was mainly because her mother's aunties from those entertainment venues were well informed. When they saw Ethan Forrester appear, they grabbed Tiffany and pulled her over, covering their mouths and screaming loudly, "Oh my God, Tiffany, how do you know the Forrester family? The one on stage looks like the Forrester young master." The sound was so loud, even dogs passing by the entrance could probably hear it. Brandon wasn't deaf. He turned around and looked at Tiffany, who was surrounded, and his face instantly turned ugly. But clearly, Brandon didn't understand the Forrester family's importance in these circles. And neither did his relatives. They stepped forward, grabbed Brandon, and started grumbling and complaining. "What's going on, Brandon? You called Ev. Everyone from the village here. Didn't you say you were going to show us marrying two women? How is it that before the wedding even started, one of the wives is running off with another man? Yeah, Brandon, you brought us here to share in your glory. Your wife running off at the wedding like this is a huge disgrace to all his relatives." Brandon's face alternated between pale and green. He wasn't happy to begin with, and these few words of complaint made his face even uglier. So, ignoring everyone's stunned gazes, he stepped forward, pointed at Ethan Forrester on the stage, and started cursing angrily. "What the hell are you? You think you can just take her because you want her? Catherine Sullivan is my woman. You say you want her, and you just take her? Who do you think you are?" Ethan Forrester looked at Brandon before him and smiled faintly. He looked at Brandon like a monkey in a circus, his voice suddenly turning cold. "Because I want her. In my 27 years of life, what Ethan Forrester wants, he gets." Brandon suddenly laughed, looking at the calm Ethan Forrester. He burst out laughing. "You want her? What kind of lapdog are you? Just because you want something, I have to give it to you? You don't need to give her up. Catherine is willing to be my bride." Hearing Ethan Forrester say this, Brandon laughed even more wildly. The confidence in his eyes seemed to overflow with his laughter. Of course, I knew where this confidence came from. I had practically worshipped him for 8 years. He had every reason to be so confident. After a bout of wild laughter, Brandon pointed at me and said haughtily, "Catherine Sullivan, I'm giving you one last chance. Tell everyone right now, are you willing to be his bride?" Looking at the arrogant man before me, I couldn't help but laugh silently. I was suddenly in a daze, not understanding what I had ever loved about him. The guests below the stage looked at me intently. I looked at Ethan Forrester beside me and offered a smile, then very naturally took his arm and said calmly to Brandon, "Of course, I'm willing." I couldn't ask for anything more. Brandon, are you deaf or just stupid? Just 10 minutes ago, I said myself that I was changing the groom. Why wouldn't I be willing? Fury flared in Brandon's eyes. He suddenly stepped back a few paces, then leaped onto the stage. Before I could react, he grabbed my collar and said fiercely through gritted teeth, "Catherine Sullivan, don't push your luck. We were together for 8 years. What is so good about this man beside you? What makes you disregard our 8 years together and switch grooms just like that?" It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned it. When he did, all the humiliations I had endured by his side over those 8 years instantly flooded my mind. I abruptly raised my hand and slapped Brandon hard across the face. I looked at him and replied fiercely, "What's good? It's better than marrying you and watching you flaunt your shameless plan of marrying 2 women. It's better than marrying an ignorant pauper like you. It's better than marrying a worthless man like you who doesn't know how to cherish someone and is completely shameless." That slap stunned Brandon completely. For 8 years, I had followed Brandon around like a lapdog. I had never even raised my voice to him. In an instant, Brandon's relatives below the stage started pointing and whispering about him. Well, this second son of the Brandon family doesn't seem to be doing so well out there. How can he let a woman slap him around like that? Yeah, in our village, forget about a woman hitting a man, they wouldn't even dare to look displeased at one. TSK, if you ask me, this wedding isn't interesting at all. The Brandon family was just bragging. These voices quickly reached Brandon's ears. His previously subdued attitude was enraged once more. But this time, he went after Ethan Forrester. Looking at Ethan Forrester, who was nearly a head taller than him, Brandon didn't dare to physically strike. He pointed at Ethan Forrester with his index finger and roared defiantly, "I'm going to be the groom today. What are you going to do about it?" Having said that, he grabbed me, bent down, and lunged towards my neck, aiming for a kiss. The familiar scent approached. In the past, it would have made me blush and my heart pound. But now, there was only disgust. Just as I was thinking about how to evade him, a large hand reached past me and grabbed Brandon's tie directly. A deep voice sounded above me again, "Don't touch my woman." But Brandon clearly intended to push his shamelessness to the limit. He stepped forward, leaning closer to me, and a lewd smile twisted his lips as he looked up at Ethan Forrester. "I did touch her. What are you going to do about it? I've slept with her for 8 years." The moment he finished speaking, Brandon was kicked flying. When I turned, I saw Ethan Forrester's cold, stern back. He strode quickly towards Brandon, who was sprawled on the ground. He placed a foot on Brandon's body, his eyes devoid of patience. He coldly ordered the man with the scar on his face, who was below the stage, "Go bring his father here. I'm tired of dealing with this ingrate who doesn't know his place." The man acknowledged and disappeared. A few minutes later, an old man who bore some resemblance to Brandon returned with the man. Brandon clearly saw who it was. Lying on the ground, he desperately roared towards the old man, "Dad, hurry and come avenge your son." "What is this guy? I've never even seen him in your phone." Hearing Brandon's words, I couldn't help but laugh silently. It seemed Brandon's father often briefed Brandon. He probably told Brandon about everyone in these metropolis circles. But alas, Ethan Forrester had been severely ill in bed for years. It seemed his father had forgotten to mention him. Brah. Don's father bent over, slightly raised his head, and the moment he saw Ethan Forrester, he immediately knelt down before Ethan Forrester with a thud. Looking at Ethan Forrester, his voice trembled slightly. "Ethan, no, Mr. Forrester, it's this old man's fault for not raising his son properly. He's offended you. Please be magnanimous and don't hold it against us." Brandon clearly hadn't expected his father to act this way towards a younger man. It was probably my fault, I thought. His father was just a driver. For years, let alone towards Ethan Forrester, even towards a baby in these circles, he would have to humble himself. Having been associated with me for years, Brandon must have long regarded the Sullivan family as his own. He thought the respect shown to me was also directed at him. This person was truly too foolish. "Dad, what are you doing? Why are you kneeling to him?" Brandon scrambled to his feet unsteadily in front of Ethan Forrester. But just as he crawled in front of his father slapped Brandon across the face. Brandon clearly hadn't expected his father to hit him in front of all the guests. He pointed at Ethan Forrester and his father and shouted, "Dad, why are you hitting me? It's him! He's trying to steal my wife. You're not helping me, you're hitting me? What's so great about a piece of trash like Catherine Sullivan anyway? I don't see why anyone would want her." Hearing Brandon insult me again, Ethan Forrester's previously slightly relaxed demeanor instantly tensed up again. He stepped forward again and kicked Brandon, who was kneeling on the ground, sprawling him over. "You piece of filth! Say one more bad word about Catherine, and I'll kill you." As soon as Ethan Forrester finished speaking, Brandon's father's face turned deathly pale. He scrambled, practically rolling, to Ethan Forrester's feet. He cupped Ethan Forrester's foot and started wiping the sole of his shoe with his sleeve. While wiping, he kept kowtowing and apologizing. "I'm sorry, Mr. Forrester, I've dirtied your eyes, I've dirtied the sole of your shoe. It's all my fault. I didn't raise my son properly, and he came out and angered you. Please be magnanimous and forgive him this once." Honestly, I was stunned to see Brandon's father so subservient. It was rumored in these circles that the Forrester family started out in illegal businesses. Because of this, their influence on both sides of the law was not to be underestimated over the years. In fact, the moment Ethan Forrester said that line, I had already felt an involuntary chill run down my spine. But I hadn't taken it seriously. Yet, seeing Brandon's father's current state, it seemed the rumors in these circles were true. I finally understood the saying Robert often had on his lips, "Crossing class boundaries requires generations to pay in blood." The sight of Brandon's father kneeling on the ground and wiping a shoe must have been a huge shock to Brandon. He must have finally realized, clearly, that he and Ethan Forrester were not on the same level at all. Thus, the arrogant posture he had moments ago vanished instantly from Brandon's eyes. "Hurry up! You lapdog! Get over here and apologize to Mr. Forrester. Do you really want to die?" This time, Brandon was unusually obedient. He crawled to Ethan Forrester's feet in the exact same posture as his father. Kneeling on the ground, he started kowtowing repeatedly with thuds. "I'm sorry, Mr. Forrester, I was blind and didn't know who I was dealing with. I'm just a piece of filth. I made you unhappy." This was the first time I had seen Brandon so utterly subservient. I never expected he could perform this complete set of groveling apologies with such practiced ease. Ethan Forrester frowned slightly, looking at the father and son before him. Clearly, he was running out of patience. Without waiting for Brandon to finish his apology, he pointed towards me. "Go, apologue. Eyes to the person you should apologize to." Seeing this, Brandon's father grabbed his son and crawled to my feet. He started kowtowing repeatedly, one after another. At first, Brandon hesitated slightly, but seeing the cold gaze Ethan Forrester directed at him, he also started lowering his head to the ground repeatedly, just like his father. "I'm sorry, Catherine, no. I'm sorry, Miss Sullivan, it's my fault. I'm the most worthless one, I'm the one who's worth nothing. Please don't be angry, please forgive me." Although I was seeing such a scene for the first time, I unexpectedly felt a similar sense of annoyance as Ethan Forrester. Ethan Forrester must have seen the emotion in my eyes. He waved a hand at Brandon's father. "Get out. You've dirted the carpet. And all that trash from your village, get them all out." Those people had clearly never seen such a scene. While they were still in a daze, they were dragged out by the people Ethan Forrester had brought. In the crowd, I instantly saw Tiffany frantically trying to take off her wedding dress. "That young lady, wait a moment." Before I could speak, Ethan Forrester beside me spoke again. Tiffany realized Ethan Forrester was speaking to her, and dragging her half-removed wedding dress, she frantically ran towards the exit. Instantly, several burly men rushed in front of her and blocked her way. "Bring her here." Ethan Forrester's voice turned cold again. The burly men exchanged a look with Ethan Forrester, then dragged and pulled Tiffany to stand before me. Ethan Forrester turned to look at me, his voice becoming much softer. "Since we're dealing with this trash, we might as well handle it all today, so it doesn't bother you later." Tiffany must have seen the true faces of Brandon and his father just now. So this time, before I could speak, Tiffany knelt down before me with a thud. Ignoring the exposed half of her body, she pleaded tearfully, "Catherine, it was all Brandon's idea. I know you were angry about those messages I sent you that day, but Brandon sent them. They had nothing to do with me. The engagement party incident was his idea too. You know how hard it is for me to make a living here. I didn't dare to do something like that on my own. If it were in the past, seeing a young girl weeping before me, I would surely have softened. But now, looking at Tiffany before me, I truly didn't feel an ounce of pity for her. If she said Brandon gave her the nerve, I would believe it. But kissing him passionately in front of my mother at the engagement party, and then sending those provocative messages, I didn't believe Brandon had the intelligence for that. I knelt down and grabbed Tiffany's chin. "If you know making a living isn't easy, you shouldn't do such despicable things. You were the one who had your arm around Brandon's waist that day and told him you were willing." Having said that, I slapped Tiffany across the face. This slap was for my deceased mother. Then I raised my hand and slapped her again. This slap was for my past self, who had been humiliated by her. I had never hit anyone before. Only now did I realize that hitting people was quite tiring. Tiffany clearly didn't dare to speak. Covering her swollen face, she kept apologizing. I slowly stood up, looked at Tiffany kneeling on the ground, and sighed, "Tiffany, you shouldn't have coveted something that didn't belong to you." Ethan Forrester seemed to notice the weariness in my eyes. He waved his hand at the burly men. "Take her out. She's not bad looking. You guys can have her tonight." I turned sharply to look at the sinister-looking Ethan Forrester. Ethan Forrester watched Tiffany being dragged away and adjusted his cuff. Then he turned and smiled lightly at me. "What? Scared?" Regretting it? I also curled the corners of my lips into a smile, looking at Ethan Forrester. What is there to be afraid of? An open attack is easier to defend against than a hidden one. The wedding was a complete mess. But it didn't matter. Everyone present was originally from the Brandon and Tiffany families anyway. Robert, who had been observing everything coolly from the guest seats, saw the crowd disperse. He slowly got up from his seat. He looked at Ethan Forrester and said coldly, "Now that you're my son-in-law, you owe me an explanation, don't you? How are you here?" Ethan Forrester saw Robert suddenly turn serious. The sinister smile instantly vanished. He quickly went down from the stage and helped Robert sit down. Then, fidgeting with his cuff, he looked at Robert a little awkwardly. Actually, I recovered a long time ago. But the elders in the family said they didn't want to make a fuss, so we kept it a secret. I didn't mean to hide it from you intentionally, because Catherine knew about it early on." Robert heard Ethan Forrester's words. First, he was stunned, then a hint of anger appeared in his eyes. He turned to look at me and asked in a deep voice, "Catherine, is what Ethan says true? You knew when you said you wanted to marry Ethan that day?" I looked at Robert and chuckled. Actually, I didn't know that day. It was only after the Stellar Awards ceremony that day that I became suspicious. I hadn't originally intended to investigate further, but the messages Tiffany sent that day truly provoked me deeply. I had already spoken harshly to Tiffany, and sending someone to investigate was to make myself more confident at today's wedding. Unexpectedly, the investigation really did uncover the news that Ethan Forrester had woken up a long time ago. I walked behind Robert, massaging his shoulders while smiling. "What? Isn't it a good thing he's awake? Do you really want your son-in-law to be paralyzed and unconscious in bed all the time?" Robert grabbed my hand, turned around, looked at me, and also burst out laughing. Then he took my hand and Ethan Forrester's hand and placed them together. Tears suddenly welled up in his eyes. "Good, of course, it's good. Dad just wants you to be happy. As long as you're happy, everything is good." That evening, Ethan Forrester and I went to Eleanor's grave. I leaned on Eleanor's tombstone and whispered next to her photo, "Mom, years ago you always said Ethan was a good boy. Now he's your son-in-law. Rest in peace there, and be well." 3 months later, Ethan Forrester and I held another wedding. On the wedding day, outside the banquet hall entrance, I saw an old man collecting trash. People passing by covered their noses and mouths. Pointing at him, they whispered in dismay, "Did you know? His son dated today's bride for 8 years. He must have provoked someone. He died overseas, and after his son died, this old man went completely mad. Oh, and the girl who died with his son was called Tiffany or something. They say she was pregnant when she died. How tragic."